Because I mean, I can't comment because I haven't played them, but now I want to play them. They're on my
list. You really want to ride this train?
Yeah, let's ride it. Toot, baby. Let's go.
Oh my God.
Come on, Dormouse, hit me. Let's go.
No, it's stick God. Yeah, let me ask you guys this question. Because I think that you're right. We do have a lot more power now than we did before because it's a lot easier to mobilize together because of the internet. People can, complain about this and that, and other people are like, oh yeah, I didn't like that either, or yeah, I had that problem too. And so it's a lot easier for people to connect. But do you feel like that is a good thing, that people are doing that and that people are critical of games and the medium? Or do you feel like we should just get the game, and whatever the game is, don't complain about it?
Very good question. Here's my thing, and I'll answer the question too. Before I started YouTube, I don't think I was very critical about games at all. I think after I started YouTube, and I understand now that the success of my YouTube channel depends on the success of the games that I'm covering, whether they're good or not, whether people enjoy playing them or actually want to get achievements or trophies in them. And that success kind of hinders or progresses my YouTube channel. I find myself being super critical about games that I think normally I would have just played and enjoyed, even with all the mistakes and failures in them. And then getting back to your question about mobilizing, to be honest, no, I don't know that it's a good thing, because it's almost like I don't want to compare us to terrorists, but it's almost like we demand things. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like we demand things, and if we get it, it's almost like, well, they have to bow down to us. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, do I think it's a bad thing that we can mobilize? Nah, I think that's cool, but to say that we can totally dictate how a game ends up playing out, you know what I mean? I don't know. I think that's maybe too much power. What do you guys think?
Like,
that's a good question, though, Dormouse.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, like, anything is a double-edged sword, in my opinion. I mean, the first time I could remember being very critical of the game industry was actually for Halo 1. I used to be a hardcore PC player at one point in time. I used to play PC games more so than console games around the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And Halo 1 originally was supposed to come to PC and Mac. And I was all excited for Halo, and I was like, yeah, they got this new Halo game, because Bungie, I'd actually been following Bungie for a while, because they had created this third-person, the name escapes me now, but the first game I played from Bungie was this, like, third-person shooter, and it kind of had, like, a Ghost in the Shell vibe to it. Mm-hmm. I was like, yo, these people are pretty cool, and, they like making a first-person shooter, sci-fi, first-person shooter, so I'm excited about this, and then, boom, all of a sudden you hear Halo coming to Xbox One exclusively, and I was like, what? And I was totally upset, because I really didn't want to get a console just for this one game. And so that's the first time I vividly remember being very critical of the industry, just getting almost like hoodwinked, because it was announced at one point that it was coming to this platform, and then a few months later, hey, that's not happening anymore, it's going to come to over here exclusively, and if you want to get it, you got to buy this platform. And I think that sometimes it could actually be beneficial, but and sometimes we often like focus on the negative aspect of it in terms of it having a negative impact, because on the one hand, I would not like for us to dictate the creative vision somebody has for their game.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like if you have this vision for your game and you want to go down this path, then perhaps like that's when it becomes a problem. But on the flip side, look what happened with the Xbox One reveal, when Microsoft was like, it's gonna have to be fully online only, you're not gonna be able to get used games, and they were just laying down the hammer, and we were like, nope, we ain't having that.
Nope.
That ain't happening. And people People went out and they were complaining.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So that's when it could actually be a double-edged sword. And sometimes it's easy for us to think about the negative times or the negative sides when we become vocal, and it's like, geez, really? But then a lot of times if we go back and think about it, man, it's sometimes that when us being vocal actually had a positive impact.
I changed my opinion.
Oh man.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, because you're right. I mean, well, I guess you could look at it in terms of that was kind of a big decision that the whole gaming industry was going to have to roll with.
Right.
Maybe I should refine my answer by saying it's the small stuff that maybe we shouldn't be.
Right.
So like the just the details, like the small stuff, like, should this gun have, like balancing issues in games and stuff that I'm referring to now. Like, game comes out and everybody's using this one gun, and then everybody complains and it gets balanced. Next thing you know, you're playing a game that you weren't playing when you bought it initially.
Exactly.
And it's just because, people are voicing their opinion. So
that's when it's a problem.
Yeah, because at any given day, you're playing a new game.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because everything's changing so much. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I guess when I was asking that question, I was thinking about I had a couple of different things in my head, and I guess my opinion on the matter is that I feel like you have the two sides, right? You have games are an art form, and when they make a game, then you should just be happy with whatever it is, because that's their quote-unquote artistic vision. And then you also have, but games are a product that I'm consuming, and is it not okay for me to have some expectation of them? So is it not okay for me to have the expectation that my game is going to work? Is it not okay for all this press release and stuff that you say that's going to be in the game, or as you said, Gaming Arcadia, that if they tell me that this game is going to come out for PC, is it not okay for me to have the expectation that it will and be upset when I find out that that's wrong? That they lied, essentially.
They lie.
I feel like that's the point where I feel like we should be able, as consumers of these media, I feel like we do have a right to be upset about things and to voice our opinions. Now, do I think that people should, send people death threats and,
that's when it's over
that kind
over
of thing is overreaction. But, I kind of had in my mind, and I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but I was extremely familiar with it at the time. The whole ending to Mass Effect 3 debacle, and how it was terrible. It was a terribly rushed game. It was, and you could tell throughout the thing the dips in quality in specific places, and especially I think culminating in the end. And you had people taking that to the nth degree, somebody trying to file a lawsuit, legal action against them for basically selling their product on a lie. And, you had just nasty things that people were saying to these developers. And I get that. That was terrible. But on the other hand, did we as consumers and as fans of that series not have the right to vocalize our opinion that, we thought that this wasn't good and this did not meet my expectations, so that they know, hey, this did not meet my expectations. The next time you make a game, please do not rush it the way that you did this time. And it's clear to see. And I just remember the backlash from that, with all these media outlets calling people crybabies and quote unquote the entitlement of video game players. And it's like, wait, let's roll it back a second here. Let's look at all these things that you promised. Is it entitlement for me to believe that you're going to fulfill those things that you said? Or is it, a consumer having expectations about the quality of something that I paid for?
It's to your point. It's like, okay, you tell me just as an example, you tell me you have this car, and I could buy, you're gonna sell me this car, and the car is fully loaded, has air conditioning, everything. I purchase the car and find out that the AC doesn't work, or it doesn't have any AC unit, and then you're like, well, you could just roll down the windows. Yeah, that's true, but you told me when I was about to buy the car, I was gonna have air conditioning. So to your point, man, I mean, I vividly remember the marketing after Mass Effect 1, I think Casey Hudson or whoever it was saying that, everybody's going to have a unique ending. By the time we wrap up this trilogy, it's going to be amazing. So people are going to go back from the first game, play it all the way to the third game, because they're going to be like 8,000 different endings. And so I'm like, wow, really? This is going to be totally different. And then you get the product and you actually experience it, and you're like, man, they lied to us. That's just a straight up lie. And so, that's when it isn't about entitlement, and it is about us being vocal about our expectations as a consumer. And it's the same thing like with when games have like too much microtransactions and all these other different DLC and all these other different ways that they try to nickel and dime us. I think we have a right to be vocal about that stuff that's not pertaining towards the actual cosmetics and the gameplay, and it's more or less the business practice of the game.
Cause see, I've never played the Mass Effect series, and I was under the assumption that it just wasn't the ending that the fans thought it should be. But what I'm gathering from you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that they specifically promised, I guess, multiple endings, or characters would have different endings, and you didn't get that. Is that where the rub is? Yeah, kind of. I mean,
basically the basic promise was that we would get because Mass Effect was each decisions that you would make throughout the game would carry over to subsequent games.
Right.
And so because of your decisions, some decisions were more impactful than others, and so because of the result of this, by the time you completed the game, you would get a totally unique ending based upon the decisions you have made leading up to that point.
Right.
But what ended up happening was that you basically everybody got either one of the three same endings. That's really what it was. It was no unique ending to my experience. It was no unique. By the time you got to the third game and the end of the third game, there wasn't really anything unique about the overall.
So your decisions really didn't matter too much.
Right. Up at that point, once you hit that particular point, it just went into autopilot, and you just had like three main decisions.
Well, then I completely agree. Then, yeah, I think that's a time where, because like you said, that's a business thing that they promised that the game would deliver, and I mean that's like promising a gameplay mechanic, and then you get the game and it ain't in there. You know what I mean?
Right. And to their point, I mean, and I remember thinking to myself, man, that's gonna be hard. 'Cause I can't remember, but I remember him saying. It was like some crazy number, like everybody's gonna have like 5,000 or 8,000 different endings, and I'm like, man, that's gonna be really hard. I mean, they saying it, and I mean, I believe in BioWare. BioWare had built up so much good.
If anybody can do it, right?
Right. So I'm like, I'm just gonna have to wait and see. And I knew when I completed it, I'm like, you know what? Because that was the same thing I was waiting for, and I vividly remember completing it, and I was just thinking to myself, you know what? They just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it, and then they just couldn't come out and say they couldn't do it.
Right.
Yeah, and there was no acknowledgement of that. I think that was the thing that was disappointing the most.
Fair
is
point.
That there was no acknowledgement by them that said, yeah, we sort of got in and over our heads, and then we had this deadline to meet, and so we had to do something different to be able to meet the publisher deadline. And we just couldn't put it all together in because I remember thinking the exact same thing that you did, like this is going to be difficult to weave in all these different choices that you've made throughout the series. And what they ended up basically doing was the choices that you made throughout the other two games came in as little bits and pieces of flavor in 3.
Right.
Like you get a text message from somebody that you saved back in 2, and it was like, "Hey,
email
thanks again. Here's a few credits or whatever," and it just came across as they didn't have the time or the resources to really be able to flesh that out for the most part. there were a couple of there were some really great moments where it did really feel like the true culmination of the things that happened throughout the series, but those were bright spots within an overall game that felt like they just did not have the time or the resources given to them to be able to do that. And I know that around that time they were they had been bought by EA, and they were also, the company was sort of split on their resources. One part of their team, and I think a lot of the original writers for the Mass Effect series had moved over to the Old Republic, and they were,
I was just about to say the Old Republic,
crazy into trying to make money off of that, make their investment back on the Old Republic. And so I don't know, I feel like that contributed to the game suffering. I mean, I could go on about freaking Mass Effect forever because
I know that's a hot button for you, boy.
It was near and dear to my heart, but
same here.
I guess.
I mean, I love, and I still love it to this day. But that third game, though, I mean, I literally, I mean, all the other Mass Effect games, like, I could say I beat about 8 to 10 times the first two games.
Yep, me too.
But that third game, I think I beat it twice.
Me too. Once on normal and once for the hard difficulty to get the achievements, and that was it.
Yep, and that was it. I had no incentive. I think I actually ended up playing the multiplayer for the third game more than the actual game.
Yep.
Yeah, see,
because the multiplayer was actually fun.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I got that whole thing wrong then, because when the story broke, of course, because I'm not in the heartbeat of that community or that game, I was like, well, it does. I mean, because it did from the outside looking in seem like people were doing that, playing that whole entitlement card. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, it's just not the ending that I wanted to see. But after talking to you guys, it's not the ending that I mean, it's not what they promised. You know what I mean? Because I think that if a game comes out and you play it, like if Uncharted 4 drops and I don't like the ending, well, that's just tough noodles. You know what I mean on my part. And I don't think it would be fair to me to send hate mail to Naughty Dog and blah blah blah. But because they haven't promised me multiple endings or anything like that. But in your case, yeah, you're right. I think y'all done changed my mind. Look at y'all. Yeah, there are times where we have the power to voice our opinion. Because didn't they give you guys a different ending?
Then they tried to make up, and then they
but it still wasn't good.
They tried to do some stuff.
But at least they tried, I guess.
They did try, and it was better. They gave an extended thing, so it fleshed out a little bit more of your individual choices and the fates of individual characters and races and things, which made it better. And if that had been what we got from the start, I think there would have been less complaining. But because, they specifically said, there are specific quotes that said there's not going to be a multiple choice ending, there's not going to be A, B, and C, or this, that, and the other. No, it wasn't A, B, and C, it was red, blue, and green.
Yeah, red, blue, and green.
But it was essentially
so technically they weren't lying.
Okay. I guess technically they weren't
that
lying.
PR stunt, baby.
Okay. You know what's so funny, man? The more I talk about this, the more angered I get because I mean, because no, for real, I just think back to that time, man, and the first ending, I vividly remember, especially when you hit that part, you start talking to the little boy, and I was like, what the hell is this?
It was terrible. It was terribly written. It was just awful. And I think the other thing for me is that I had an expectation, like you said, based on my history with BioWare, that it was going to be well written and that it was going to be a satisfying conclusion to the overall story that had played out, and it just wasn't. It felt so disconnected from everything else.
It did.
And, is it wrong for me to expect that quality is going to be there when that is what's happened over the course of time? I don't think that's wrong.
Nah, I don't think in that instance it's nah.
I think that people went about voicing their opinions in a bad way in a lot of cases, and I think to your point, Xonevant, that a lot of the media really picked up on that and hit on that these people are crying, and the fan base was really painted in a bad light by, I think, a lot of media outlets because they wanted to support BioWare. I don't know if there was money exchanged. I don't know what. But all I remember is I felt like I was being attacked as a fan of that game for voicing,
like my
for
criticism
being a
wasn't
crybaby.
legitimate.
Yeah, because I remember watching Adam Sessler do Cecil or something, I believe what it was, and he was talking about it, and I kept hearing the word entitlement, and I was thinking the same thing. I was like, God, these gamers are just being, they're just being typical gamers here, crying about something that's not really big, just because they didn't get the ending they wanted, like the franchise didn't end the way they wanted it to end. But now that I'm talking to you guys, I've completely changed my opinion, because if they promised it, they need to deliver it.
and it kind of goes to.
But she's right. The media played that up.
Right, and it kind of goes to the video you did the other day when you tricked us into talking about the Xbox and your experience with the Xbox. But it was really about you just trying to gauge why people get so heated and angered and almost like develop this hatred for these things, and it kind of goes in line with that in terms of some of the response, and that people sometimes people's passion removes all objectivity, and I mentioned this in the comments, and just the way sometimes we go about voicing our opinion or our criticism of things definitely could have been better, especially during Mass Effect time. For the most part, I mean, it's never okay to send people death threats and all these other different egregious things, right? But I think that was a separate issue versus the criticism. Was the criticism valid? And it's hard to argue that it wasn't valid. And you got to remember too that sometimes we spent a lot of time with these games,
right,
over the span of 5-6 years.
Well, people don't realize that when you play a game, two investments are being made: money and time.
Right.
Not just money. Right. Now, from a business standpoint, they just see it as money, but from our standpoint, it's time.
And Mass Effect was a special case too, because the other thing about it too was that you were crafting your story.
Right.
Yeah.
You see, so it wasn't like, say, a Halo Uncharted where you're unveiling the story of Master Chief, or you're unveiling the story of Drake.
Right.
But in Mass Effect, you were crafting your story
Every choice.
In this universe.
Right.
You see.
Yeah, I probably would have been mad too, man. Now that I'm.
Yeah. I mean that, and then I vividly remember I kid you not, I remember. When the credits were over, I was like, man, it got to be something else. Like this can't just end like this.
And you know a game has ended bad, and a movie, when you ask yourself that question after when the credits roll, like that can't be it, bro.
And I immediately went online, and I was like trying to see what other people, because I was like, man, I can't be the only one like thinking this. And no, sure enough, I wasn't. There was a lot of other people like, dude, that ending though.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point, man. That's a good. What are y'all thinking about Mass Effect 4? Are y'all?
Oh God.
Y'all down with that, or is it now a turn off because of what happened with Mass Effect? Between 1 and 3.
Oh dear.
Because I mean, I can't comment because I haven't played them, but now I want to play them. They're on my
list. You really want to ride this train?
Yeah, let's ride it too, baby. Let's go.
Oh my God.
Come on, Dormouse, hit me. Let's go.
No, it's God.